It is. So we're
Please, if I could ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, then I'll ask Councilmember Gillespie to lead us in the pledge to the flag. And I apologize, during our temporary council meeting space here, this is the flag.
Shall we pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hamburg? Present. Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Lesby?
Here.
Mrs. Lesby Mitchell? Here. Mrs. Tingle Saints? Here. Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett? Here.
Thank you. We definitely have a quorum. Each council member should have received a copy of the minutes of our last meeting. You want to look those over for me, possible corrections or questions?
Make a motion the way they are, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thanks, Tammy. If there are no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Excuse me. Each council member should have also received a copy of our latest check register. If you could indicate if you received that register. And now we're to the portion of our meeting for public comments. And we have the Southern Knights with us tonight. Brenda, Jenny, Marcia, who shall be the spokesperson?
I got elected.
You got elected. Well, please come forward.
Yes. Good afternoon. afternoon. I'm Marcia Smither. I am actually from Frankfurt, but I've been a part of the Southern Knights for a very long time. Southern Knights has been basically based out of Georgetown since 1989. And what we're here for tonight is we would like to request to possibly do our remainder of our car shows or cruise-ins that we do in downtown. We've done them in downtown before, like a few years ago, but we would like to either move them back to downtown or possibly in the parking lot behind, if that's something possible that you all might approve. All of our proceeds go to, locally here, we give them to the fire department for the Toys for Tots. Nationally, we give them to the Dream Factory. We actually do a 3-day car show at Fort Boonesboro in October. It's a big 3-day show. We have anywhere from 700 to 1,500 cars. And all the money from that, either we portion it out to Georgetown Fire Department or to, and the Dream Factory as well. We do have insurance liability, and it's $1 million policy we have to cover. Our next one, and I know it's pushing it, is June the 18th, and they're from 5 to 8 in the afternoon. The only one that would be different would be in October, and that's from 4 to 7. And we do a Halloween cruise and have people come and the kids all dress up and have a really good time.
What day of the week is that?
On Saturdays. Yes, sir.
I remember when y'all had a number of car shows along Main Street
Mm-hmm.
that seemed to be fairly successful.
Yes.
Was there a reason those ended? Do you know?
I'm not for sure. We had a different president. Our president recently, he's been gone 6 months. That was our president. Our former president also lived here in Georgetown. They had both been involved since 1989. Both of them are deceased now. My stepdad is now our new president. And with our group, it's a lot of family oriented. Like there's myself, my sister, my mom, my brother, and all of our whole crew. But we would really like to try downtown again. Currently we're doing them at Walmart. And we just don't have we're like in a back corner, so we don't have the traffic, people come in and interacting with people. We're a big family and we like to be involved with the community. We stay pretty busy with this car show stuff. All of us have cars, and so we stay pretty busy.
Just before the council has a question, all of our downtown activities, we contract and work with the Tourism Commission to
Okay.
represent the downtown merchants. Celebrate Georgetown is the name of that organization.
Okay.
And we work closely with Lori Saunders, the tourism director.
Okay, I think they've been in contact with her.
Lori would be who we would turn to make sure that this represents the downtown merchants in downtown in the way that makes everybody happy. And I'm an old gearhead. I love car shows. And I don't mind walking around and looking and talking. And, you know, my family had a car dealership when I grew up, so that's near and dear to me. But I think if you can work through tourism and make sure we're doing this in concert with tourism, then the council would probably be in a better position to allocate space or know that we're not doing it in a way that would anger some other people.
Right. Okay.
I have a question, it may be a
Yes.
suggestion, since it's such short notice, that doing it downtown, we would probably have to block it off and talk to the police department. But you mentioned the parking lot, behind City Hall, which might be a good one for this one. And plus, I think, Saturday, the farmer's market closes up at 1. And you said 5 to 7?
Yes, ma'am.
So that might be something to think about and talk with Lori and maybe coordinate it for that day, and then look at something different in October.
We actually do them, we've got June, August, September, and then October. So we would have one once a month. So we need to get in touch with Lori then.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she'll be real cooperative.
Yeah, I did talk to Lori. She said we just had to get the approval from you all first, and then she would go with it. Yeah.
She's kind of pushed it.
That's kind of what the way Laura operates, it's so get it done.
We just want to make sure we didn't have conflicting dates with other things in town on those days. And she's usually the one who comes with the forms filled out, ready for us to, making sure that all the insurance is proper, like you said, and so forth.
Sounds like they've got.
You got all that?
I have some kind of paper.
Yeah, there it is.
Have they submitted?
Not to me.
Yeah, that's something that.
Well, then we can just hand that right.
Yes.
I will hand that straight to you.
You've met the clerk, and the chief boss will be stirred into your plans as well, I'm sure.
Okay.
But we recommend checking with Lori, and then we probably have to approve whatever you.
Okay, awesome. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
your
That's just that,
I don't know if we're in a position to do it. Okay, next on the sign-in sheet for public comment is Mr. Charlie Hoffman.
Oh, thank you, Mayor.
Good time, Charlie, come in.
Council members, there you go. Please give your wife, Maureen, my regards, because I know she's the glue behind, having been in politics. The wife's always the glue of the team. As anybody here, do they know heard a song, country song called It's a Little Bit Late to Do the Right Thing Now? You know who did it?
No.
No, I don't either, but you all heard it. And I'm afraid it is.
Tucker?
It's a little too late to do the right thing now. But I believe that Georgetown City government may need to make that new theme song in conjunction with some occurrences that are going on around Scott County, and I've been keeping abreast of those. And I wanted to share that for the betterment of the city and for the council. Start off, my family has suffered from an incident that happened several days ago. That I had approached the city. Joe, is Joe here, the planning zone? No, he's not here. Is the city engineer here?
Yeah, well, just address the
Okay.
council if you would, Charlie.
I will. Okay, I've gone over this with Joe. His recommendation was an 8-foot brick wall, two-sided, with acoustic deadening material inside with a fieldstone cap across it, designating the separation between historic Georgetown and commerce. The Irish pub, Slanties, or whatever they call it. Anyhow, the other night, I've made all these notes. Oh yeah, and this is for information only. Scott County has more police presence, more police assigned to it than any other county per capita in the state. We have a larger police presence in Scott County than any other in the state. But yet we instituted a 7-cent alcohol tax, which chastised the merchants and the residents. That's supposed to provide money for the budget for, what was it, enhanced presence of the police during festivals like Festival of the Horse, and then I see, even though that produced, I think, $1.2 million, that were already $1 million in deficit on the police force also. And I live at 336 East Main Street. I've been renovating the house over next to the Georgetown Police Department where we lived for 30 years prior. Well, the other day, there was a big conference of officers come in from counties, my goodness, way out west, western Kentucky. And I was surprised to see so many of them driving cruisers instead of these big, huge gas-sucking SUVs. And I've heard people say, I've never seen, well, anyhow, this incident happened the other night. There were 6 responded, 6, 1 sheriff, 5 Georgetown Police Department. And one gentleman used to be the sheriff over in Franklin County. Don, well, anyhow, he was a good friend of mine when I was in Frankfurt. But I was hoping the city engineer was gonna be here. Matter of fact, I called and left a message that he needed to be at the meeting tonight, but I see that he's not here because he could answer a lot of the questions
Well,
that
if
I'm
you
gonna
could,
pose.
if you could come to a point.
Capsulize it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's trouble over on 336 and the Salante pub, the beer joint next door. One thing, and we talked about this before, the city has resisted to address a decibel rating. And I think we talked about you all being out at the pavilion at the Japanese garden, which I brought the money home to build that pavilion. And y'all were out there entertaining some Japanese guests, people from Toyota. And there was a call in from the peninsula about the sound.
Yes, sir, Charlie, that's been years ago, and it doesn't have anything with what happened the other day.
Oh, really?
Well, if you have I don't want to argue with you, but if you have a point to make.
Say no argument.
If you have a point to make with the council, please make it.
Okay,
because we
but
don't
they were embarrassed.
we
I
don't
remember you
limit
telling me
this
that the
public
guests
comments.
were embarrassed. Yes, they were embarrassed. I have asked about a decibel level before, but I think it was your own word, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there.
The council and I have not gone down the path of decibel meeting.
Okay.
No, sir, we haven't.
All right, well, you know how large the venue is at the Salante Pub? This room is larger. This room is larger than their venue, their court space, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, sir.
They bring in speakers that look like they're going into Rep Arena, that tall. They shake our windows in our house. We can't hear our TV. They block our driveways constantly. And in the proprietor's own words, he said, "You're not welcome here. You and your wife have been nothing but giving us grief since we came here." And thus, he took action. Anybody wants to read that, they can. He took action after I had asked the Paul Workman. I talked to Paul's, walked in the door, and he said, "Charlie, you here to celebrate, or you here to complain?" I said, "Well, I'm just here basically to walk around the thing. I was gonna have something to drink." and walked around and see if I seen anybody that I knew. So he said, go on in. Well, the next thing you know, I'm standing over at a bar that, I mean, it's packed. You can't get to the bar. Now, this time, give me a chance to say this.
This really isn't appropriate for a city council meeting, Charlie. If you have a
I-
complaint against the
Todd,
police department.
Todd, have I brought this up before? Have I brought this up before? Tammy, have I brought this up before? Connie?
Charlie, I don't care.
Okay.
I'm saying it's not appropriate for a council meeting. If you want to file a complaint, do so. If you have a point to make it,
Okay.
but you're out of time.
If you scream in the woods, or if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Because evidently it's not making it over there on our side of the town. It certainly is. And I'm not exaggerating about the wind is shaking. And, matter of fact, the one wall, I can stand right here and look, and I can see who their customers are. Now, is that acoustic? No, that's not acoustic. How can I see through an acoustic wall? I have talked with the city engineer, was allowed on the premises of this property that I was thrown out by an employee who's also a constable, I understand. And then thrown out, I guess, upon his alerting the proprietor that I was in the building. He said, go.
And then as a proprietor.
Said I'd been laughing about his wife losing the election.
The proprietor has a right to ask someone to leave their shop. But if anything else you'd like to close with, Charlie?
Let's see. Yeah, you ever watch Pale Rider? Well, you know, John Russell gets it in the end. Everybody, you know, he's the building, he's the Stockwell man or whatever, with the long dust coats, and he gets it in the end, right? He raises his head up and boom. Well, before that, he said, this is an old feud. It's got to be settled. Well, this is an old feud. It's got to be settled. And you can either sit in those chairs and lead or step aside. Sit on your hands. See if I got any more over here, because I'm about finished. But you all are much aware, documentation. We've had everybody over. David's been over there. Todd's been over there. Tammy knows the situation. Mark. Karen.
Thanks, Charlie, you're out of time.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for your all's time.
Yes, sir.
And I'm glad we have a lot of police. I'm not for defunding police departments.
Now we transition to mayor's comments. And the really good news is tonight, I've got a handful of mayor's comments for you. You won't get off the hook in that regard. But we have what's mentioned on your agenda is we have a very special portion of our agenda under mayor's comments, and that is hitting Police Sergeant Christopher Perkins. If I could ask Chief Bossy and Sergeant Perkins and his wife, who is going to be honored. Chief Bossy?
Mayor, Council, I want to introduce Chris Perkins and his wife Amanda. Chris went through our sergeant's process a couple weeks ago. I've never seen a guy smile so many times when that list came out. I really think he's ready to do us a good job. He's got a lot of good leadership skills and speaks highly of his city, his police department, and his family. Amanda, do you want to do the honors?
Absolutely.
Before we started, blood was optional.
Thanks.
dates on most of the things. This coming Saturday will be our Juneteenth celebration at Ed Davis Park, beginning at 1 o'clock. Holiday's actually on the Sunday. Falls on a Sunday this year, and we celebrate it on Monday. It's an employee holiday, but the event will be at Ed Davis Park at 1 o'clock. Very family-oriented, bounce tents, food trucks, so hopefully it'll be the weather will cooperate and it'll be really festive. And don't forget about our 4th of July parade coming up. Council's invited to ride on the fire trucks and do that. And I think that kicks off at 11 o'clock, doesn't it? Also, Eddie did want us to know that we were rebidding our Cardinal Drive project. I know we've been working on that CMAQ grant for a long time, trying to get it applied in the most productive way. The bids came in, from our perspective, outrageously high on what we had prepared as a scope of work. So in working with the Transportation Cabinet, the challenge has been to pare back the scope of work to where we think we will get bids in the range of the amount of money that we have. So that's being rebid, and we think we opened bid station July 1st.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll have some good information for the council pretty soon on that rebid and what the scope of work will look like. We'll get all the improvements that we wanted on Cardinal Drive done. We may not get a turn lane on 32 that we wanted. Let's see. This past Saturday night, we had the NAACP dinner. Mark, appreciate you and your dad joining us for that dinner. That was good to attend. And we had a really successful party on the square again. We've had 2 straight party on the square with great weather, and the public has really turned out. Laurie wanted this year to try to go back to the square. So we enjoy being out at the park, and we may be so for some of the events later, but downtown really is good for the crowd. And we have to close Main Street, but it's been worth it. Let's see, these other notes have to do with things we'll discuss later. Any questions on any of those comments? Okay, thanks. Chase.
Thank you, Mayor. With me tonight is Michael and Callie virtually. Virtually, so if we have questions related to some of our business tonight, we have the right people on the screen, and also our finance director, Jeff Nutter, is here. So again, the tough questions, we'll go to those 3. We have 4 items on your agenda, but a 5th item that I put in front of you that actually goes with items A and B. But items A and B are both related to our intermediate financing program for wastewater plant number 1, the upgrade and expansion. And as discussed at the last meeting, we are requesting to borrow approximately $35 million through bank financing. We presented on these items again last meeting and completed first reading of the 2022 Series A Bond Anticipation Note Ordinance and the 2024 Series A Bond Ordinance. So in addition to these ordinances, we have the proposals that we've received on June 1st from the lenders related to the bond anticipation note. I apologize that did not make it into your council packet, and so you have the hard copies there. We're very pleased with the response with Baird working with us on our request for proposals. We received 9 proposals. That's a better than expected rate of response. Truist Bank offered what we have evaluated as the lowest and the optimal financing option for the bond anticipation note number 2. That's at a fixed rate of 2.45%. We did, our staff as well as Baird staff did run analysis on multiple responses to make sure that we weren't just looking at that one number and saying that's the lowest, that's the best. We actually ran multiple scenarios. If you'd like to talk about those, we're happy to prepare to go through those. But in the end, we did settle that the optimum was the lowest at the fixed rate at 2.45%. And again, that's from Truist Bank. I believe that's formerly, is it BB&T?
Yes.
So, obviously, on this subject, we will, for the entirety of the project, take out more than $35 million in bonds, but we'll do that through an amended bond ordinance sometime next year when we go for the permanent financing. So tonight, we are requesting second reading of the bond anticipation note ordinance and the bond ordinance, as well as your consideration of our recommendation through Truist Bank on the bond anticipation note number 2. I'll stop there and pause for questions if you have any.
Chase, what's the term on the loan? I mean, how many, the amortization, and how long is it fixed?
It's fixed for the entire trip. What's the term on that?
Yes, it's fixed, the 2.45 is fixed for the term, 2-year term. We expect to be back in front of you guys in a year or so with the bond takeout. This note is an interest-only note. The bond takeout will repay the principal. So, yeah, this is 2.45 over 2 years.
2 years, so we got that rate for 2 full years.
2 full years.
Were there other options that were considered, like,
We considered a regions option, and simply because it had a close interest rate, 2.65, but it also had a draw option that we thought was compelling.
right?
After we took that initial lump sum draw, we could draw as we needed on the remaining. That's at a variable rate though, those draws, and as I discussed with Baird today, rates are already slated to go up about
Right.
3/4 of a point. So that variable rate did not seem as compelling to us. We kind of refer to the Truist option as a set it and forget it. We've got that 2.45 for the life of the note, don't have to worry about interest rates continuing to tick up, so we thought that.
On the larger note, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And what we're not going to spend immediately, Baird is going to help us invest that remainder to cover part of that interest at the 2.45%.
Yeah, I'm not second guessing, just trying to understand a little bit, that's it.
Sure. Of course.
You can offset some of those costs,
Correct.
Yes.
but not earn.
Correct.
Arbitrage still. Good.
That's correct.
Thank you. So with this, Chase, do we need to approve your board second reading, or do we need to have second reading?
We need second reading.
That's ready for the June summit?
An ordinance of the city of Georgetown, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of its water and sewer revenue bond anticipation note 2022 Series A and an approximate aggregate principal amount of $30 million, which amount may be increased by $3 million or decreased by any amount. 2, 1, refund in advance of maturity of the city water and sewer revenue bond anticipation note 2019 Series A. 2, refund at or in advance of the maturity of the city's water and sewer revenue anticipation note Series 2022, and 3, provide additional interim financing in anticipation of the issuance of the city's water and sewer revenue bonds. 2024 Series A, designated city as the paying agent and registrar in respect thereof, approving the form of the 2022 Series A notes, approving the preparation of a request for proposals and other offering documents for the 2022 Series A notes, authorizing designated officers to execute and deliver the 2022 Series A notes, providing for the payment and security of the 2022 Series A notes, establishing a note redemption fund, cost of issuance account, and construction and acquisition account, providing for the sale of the 2022 Series A notes to the best bidder, and repealing inconsistent ordinances. The ordinance authorizes the issuance of a series of water and sewer revenue bond anticipation notes by the city of Georgetown, Kentucky, the city, in an approximate principal amount of $30 million, the 2022 Series A, 1, to refund the advance of maturity of the city's outstanding water sewer revenue bond anticipation note 2019 Series A and water sewer revenue anticipation note Series 2022. The proceeds of which were collectively used to finance a portion of the cost of the expansion of the city's existing sanitary sewer treatment plant and related facilities, the project, on an interim basis. 2, to finance additional costs of the project and other improvements to the city's sewer collection and treatment facilities and water production, treatment, and distribution facilities on an interim basis in anticipation of the future issuance of the city's water and sewer revenue bonds, 2024 Series A. 3, to pay capitalized interest, and 4, to pay the cost of issuing the 2022 Series A notes. Related to the 2022 Series A notes, the ordinance also provides the execution and delivery by the city of a request for the proposals and other offering documents. The 2022 Series A notes are to be sold at an advertised public sale in accordance with the provision of Chapter 424 of the Kentucky Revised Statute, or by the solicitation of proposals as required by law. The 2022 Series A notes are to bear interest payable at a single rate from their date of issuance to maturity, as shall be established upon their sale. The interest rate applicable to the 2022 Series A notes shall not exceed 7.0% per annum. Introduced to public record the first time on May 23rd, 2022, public record the second time, June 13th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Thank you, Todd.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Chase or his financial advisor? Hearing none, shall we call the roll?
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Leslie?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingley?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Thank you. Chase?
Okay, couple more things. We have a purchase order for Stotts Construction, the amount of $11,500.
Yeah, their second reading.
The
Sorry.
2024 thing?
Sorry.
Any explanation?
No, but
Okay.
In order for the city of Georgetown, Kentucky, authorizing the issuance of up to $35 million principal amount of the city's water and sewer revenue bonds 2024 Series A for the purpose of refunding the city's outstanding water and sewer revenue bond anticipation notes 2022 Series A. 2, financing improvements to the city's municipal water and sanitary sewer system, and 3, paying related costs. Designating the paying agent and registrar in retrospect thereof. Approving the preparation of preliminary and final official statements for the 2024 Series A bonds. Providing for the sale of the 2024 Series A bonds to the lowest and best bidder, and authorizing the execution of documents on behalf of the city. The ordinance authorizes the city of a maximum principal amount of $35 million. The 2024 Series A bonds, 1, to refund in advance of maturity the city's outstanding water and sewer revenue bond anticipation notes 2022 Series A, proceeds of which will be used to finance a portion of the cost of the expansion of the city's existing sanitary sewage treatment plant and related facilities, the project, on an interim basis, and to refund a prior interim financing obligation of the city that was also used for such purpose. 2, to finance additional costs of the project. 3, to fund any necessary increase in the reserve account established for the benefit of the 2024 Series A bonds and other obligations secured by a first lien pledge of the revenues of the city's municipal water and sanitary sewer system, to pay the cost of credit enhancements for the 2024 Series A bonds, if any. 5, to pay capitalized interest, if any, and 6, to pay the cost of issuance of the 2024 Series A bonds. Related to the 2024 Series A bonds, the ordinance also approves 1, a preliminary and final official statement, 2, official terms and conditions of the bond sale, and 3, continuing disclosure undertaking. The 2024 Series A bonds are to be sold at an advertised public sale in accordance with the provision of Chapter 424 of the Kentucky Revised Statute as required by law. The 2024 Series A bonds are to bear interest payable at a rate or rates from their date of issuance to their respective maturities, as shall be established upon their sale. Introduced and publicly read for the first time on May 23rd, 2022, publicly read for the second time, June 13, 2022.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion made.
Second.
Anything, side? If there are no questions, I'm hoping there are no questions. If we had to do another reading by summary, I'm not sure Tracy could survive it. Okay, we got a first and a second, and
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mrs. Lesby Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Should we go ahead, does that include the recommendation for Truist, or does that need to be a separate action by the council?
So regular meeting, you can walk it on.
That's
That's
what
this,
that's
right?
what you have printed out for you.
Those are the benefits. We need to move this forward. Had this been a call meeting, we would not legally have been able to do this. You can walk things on the agenda for variance.
Do you need a motion for this, Mayor? A motion for the Truist thing?
Second.
Any questions on this one? If not, does this require a roll call, Tracy?
No.
So I do a quick question. This is 33 million.
I just noted that. I think the final amount comes when we go for our permanent financing. What the draw on what is our official on the bond anticipation of to?
The amount, the full amount borrowed,
Correct.
probably 31 and a half. The 33 is more than not to exceed number.
Right.
Because I said 35 a second ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of, again, working with what we're looking at with the change order and truing up working with the contractor on what we're gonna need over the next, we've got 2 years, but probably 12 to 18 months.
Okay. And then when that time's up, we'll roll over whatever the amount is into a fixed rate, I guess, at that time.
Yeah, we'll roll over to the final bond takeout at that time.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that carries.
Okay. Yeah. Two more quick items. Purchase order to Stotts Construction, $11,500. This is for replacement of a section of water line that's been repeatedly washed out as it's located downstream of a spillway. We're gonna permanently take care of this, have the line directional drilled through the bedrock. We reached out to vendors that have this capability, reached out to 3, only received 2 responses, but we're happy with this price from Stotts for $11,500. This is not a budgeted purchase as it's unexpected, but we will pay for this through our distribution operational budget.
I'm so used to you saying millions, I had to look twice at you said 1,000.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Motion been made, is there a second? Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tish on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that carries.
Finally, we have an agreement for our financial audit services. This is for the Georgetown municipal component. Stacy is kind enough to bid our audit services that we require along with the cities. We received just the one response from RFH Consultants, done our previous audits for a number of years, and I have the price comparison over the last 3 years to the next 3 years projected, and we're recommending this for approval.
Motion made.
Second.
And second.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
On the 2019 through 21, it was the same price, and then it's jumping up, looks like $3,000, and then $500 thereafter. Any particular reason, Chase?
None given.
None given?
Well, we bid these 3 years at a time, so obviously they've had increased costs throughout
Sure.
those 3 years as well. I know on the city side, when we bring the city's engagement letter for RFH to you, our audits have grown increasingly complicated with the federal
Sure.
awards that we've received, with the leases, and just, we continue to grow. So it's really inflationary. Like I said, we bid it 3 years at a time, and they hold the price for 3 years, so.
I'm probably more surprised that the previous 3 years remain constant.
Remain
than
constant.
The increases this year.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chase.
Thank you.
Anything else you have for us?
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome, Chase.
Yeah, you should thank her for what she does. Some of the ordinances. Item 8 on our agenda, under Chief Administrative Officer, we have a municipal order approving our annual city works contract. Pretty basic in our operations.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Second, Rick, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That carries. Item B, a municipal order approving the City Hall construction manager contract. First, an update, I've had an opportunity to talk with several council members. But we have been very encouraged by what Andrew and our architects have learned about state historic tax credits, and the very real possibility that there could be as much as $1.8 million of funding available through those historic tax credits. Our concern has long been on a project of our type that meeting the standards of the Department of the Interior were so difficult at times that much of your savings was taken up by the additional costs you incurred by meeting those standards. In working with our architect, we've learned that given the type of renovation that we're doing, that's not going to apply to us very much. So there may be real gain of $1.8 million, which is a game changer for this project. It helps us significantly. In fact, we've explored this to the point now where when Karen, one of the partners from Nwacp Sargent, comes up later this month, I think, Andrew. Next month. They've already started, they're working on scheduling meetings with the State Historic Preservation Office, so our architects can begin pursuit of preliminary work that might be necessary to apply for these tax credits. We're also beginning to take a hard look at the federal tax credits. Federal tax credits are more complicated, but they're possible. And they could be an amount equal to that or more, maybe as much as $2 million or more. Where it gets very complicated is to take advantage of federal tax credits, we would have to go through a complicated structure of actually selling City Hall to a not-for-profit or an agency that can take advantage of the tax credits with an in-place reciprocal agreement that at the end of that tax credit period, when those tax credits are exhausted and they have no value, City Hall gets transferred back to the city. That's very complicated, and we would want to go very carefully there. The legal fees of examining that, the legal fees of examining the state one, I don't even know. We would look at those. The federal attempt is probably, we would have to make a legal investment of $250,000. So we're going to do more homework for you, but the potential of $2.2 to $2.5 million in additional tax credits in exchange for a $250,000 cost and a complicated structure for a period of time might be of value to the taxpayer. We'd like to evaluate that. With the 1.8, along with what Andrew would talk a little bit about the construction manager contract. I think the biggest thing with this consideration is it's less than what the architects predicted. So it gets rather easy when those things occur. So I wanted to give you that update on the state tax credits. I think they're very real and something that will be explored. We'll do more homework on the federal tax credits, but we acknowledge the structural difficulty.
Yeah, that's great news. I don't know if Kitty Duga is watching tonight, I hope she is, but I know she's been very passionate about this, and Andrew, you were the right person, obviously. I know the mayor's got a great team in place, but thanks for pursuing that and getting a handle on that, and obviously, Mayor, relaying this news. It is a game changer.
Yeah.
For sure. That's significant.
the municipal order before you, brings on construction activity.
Mayor, I make a motion on this, and I worked with Cardinal when, it says conduct, Cardinal has it. I worked with Cardinal when I was mayor, and we worked with Cardinal with the police department too.
Yeah.
And they helped considerably, so.
I'll be glad to second that motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions on the contract? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 9, under the Finance Department, we have second reading of the fiscal year 22-23 budget ordinance. Sponsors, Mr. Busby and Ms. Tackett.
So we'll let Tracy do second reading and see if anyone has
I
questions.
think we should.
An ordinance of the city of Georgetown, Kentucky, adopting the annual budget for the fiscal period July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023 by estimating revenues and resources and appropriating funds for the operation of city government. Summary. Section 1 adopts by incorporated exhibit the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget of the city of Georgetown, Kentucky as follows. Governmental funds. Prior year revenues, $20,247,021. Revenues. Municipal taxation, $2,875. Licenses and permits, $24,837,011. Franchise fees, $1,932,000. Fines and forfeitures, $102,400. Intergovernmental revenues, $8,047,983. Charges for service, $1,485,237. Other revenue, $24,300. Other financing sources and transfers, $29,118,594. Total city revenue, $68,422,525. Expenditures, general government, $2,014,100. City council, $183,806. City clerk, $297,235. Police, $9,941,649. Public Works, $5,158,058. Fire, $9,076,069. Code enforcement, $394,761. Building inspection, $603,063. Dispatch telecommunications, $2,592,879. Utilities, $904,000. Community services, $3,481,223. Interlocal, $7,582,236. Capital outlay, $33,953,674. Debt service, $1,136,455. Transfer to other funds, $11,193,521. Total city expenditures, $88,512,729. Proprietary funds, original budget, revenues, sanitation, $2,200,000, cemetery, $230,000, intergovernmental revenue, $135,390, other revenues, $6,000, other financing sources, transfers, $795,617. Total proprietary revenues, $3,367,007. Expenditures, sanitation, $2,200,000. Stormwater, $655,227. Cemetery, $511,780. Total proprietary expenditures, $3,367,007. Section 2 authorizes the mayor, except as provided in the Georgetown Purchasing Policy adopted in Municipal Order 11-208, amended in Municipal Order 22-17, to enter into any contracts or agreements necessary to fulfill the operation of city government within the allocations listed in this ordinance. Section 3 provides that if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held unconstitutional or otherwise invalid, such infirmity shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 4 provides that all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time May 23rd, 2022. Publicly read for the second time June 13th, 2022.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Second. And second. Motion made, seconded. Any questions? Stacy?
Good, Mayor, you know, Stacy kind of points out that 29,118,000. Can you just kind of explain why that shows up that way, where that is, the other financing?
Is that on the
sources?
ordinance?
Yeah.
The other financing sources, Tracy, can I see a
Yeah.
copy of the ordinance? I brought the budget with me, but not the ordinance and stuff. So a bulk of that is transfers to capital projects. Pull up the budget and look at it too. That would help me. The revenue side. I know that part of that is because you have the transfer into the capital projects fund
Right.
of $11 million. You have transfers into stormwater funds, all of those other funds. Let me look at one other thing. Let's see.
Would some of the capital for like fire trucks, ARPA money be?
Well, this is on the revenue side, and that's what I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Exactly what is in there. It's usually the other funds, not the general funds, that have all of that. So I'm just trying to flip through. I apologize for not having it off the top of my head.
I'm afraid Mr. Scoggins is gonna report that we brought in $68 million in revenue, and that could be a little misleading.
Yeah, it's not usually true revenue. I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head. Give me 1 minute. Oh, it's the KIA loan proceeds. It's the balance of that in addition to City Hall transfer.
For the sewer?
Yes,
project?
yes.
Okay.
So the KIA, the low interest KIA loan that we have is funneling through our capital projects fund, and we are paying the contractor for the South Sewer extension. So that's a loan proceed, which is another financing source. I knew
And
it
the
get there
rest-
eventually, I apologize.
The rest is the city hall.
Most of that, yes. You've got a couple of other small transfers for stormwater and things, but the KIA project is the biggest bulk of that. And the rest is City Hall, yes. So if you look at the Capital Projects Fund on page 34, if you're going by the page numbers at the top, not the ones at the bottom, you will see transfers of 10.3 million, loan proceeds of 18.7. So that's the vast bulk of that 29 million.
Thank you.
Good clarification.
Sorry, I didn't remember that one off the top of my head for some reason.
Well, we're not used to borrowing that much money from KIA.
Yes, it's the KIA project for South Sewer.
Stop it, man. Any other questions?
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mrs. Takis?
Yes.
Thank you. That budget process was long and difficult, so thank you for helping us get that passed and finished. Hopefully the next one will be easier. next on the agenda under finance is first reading of our current budget amendment ordinance. That's before us.
Okay. I will just give a quick highlight. The memo included in your packet hopefully explained most of that. The majority of this is going to be cleanup of certain line items that have gone over budget, such as motor fuel or utilities that we didn't quite anticipate the expense that we had this year. Previously approved transactions, two big things that I'll mention, and then if you have any additional questions, we can go over those. For the City Hall architectural contract, we had originally budgeted that from ARPA funds, but in the preparation of the 2023 budget, we had decided to move that to prior year revenue from the general fund to free up ARPA funds for other things. But we are starting to receive architectural invoices, so we're going to go ahead and make sure it's in this budget to cover that. And we'll make that transfer as of June 30, 2022 from the general fund to the capital projects fund. And the second one is simply the creation of a new fund called the Medical Self-Insurance Fund. We have always charged each department individually and will continue to charge each department individually for the cost of their insurance. However, we are fully self-insured, which means we come up with what the cost of each premium would be for each employee depending on the plan they've chosen. We charge that to the employees, to the departments, and then we accumulate that money and we pay the claims ourselves rather than running through an insurance company. We set this up several years ago. On the recommendation of our auditors, they wanted to see us move that to its own fund for tracking everything rather than just having like a single in-out line item where all the medical contributions come in, payments go out. So we're just gonna have that set aside so that it can show that balance instead of having it as a liability on the balance sheet.
Have we been doing it long enough now that you can see whether it's been a cost savings, how much cost savings has been?
I think it has been. We have occasionally a bad claim year, and we've always said we want to try to keep at least $500,000 in cash accumulated for when we do have those bad years. We did have one a little bit before COVID. Those can't be helped. And then, we got down a little bit, but then we've gotten back up to $500,000 to $700,000 in our accumulated balance. But we show that as a liability on the balance sheet, and they're like, that's not really a liability, it's cash you're saving for a rainy day. So we're going to show it in its own fund. But to set up a new fund, it's got to be done through the budgetary process. So I wanted to make sure it got finished before fiscal year 22. So when we do this next audit, it'll be there.
Setting up a self-insurance pool, they always count on, you're gonna have a clunker of experience here somewhere in your first 3 to 4 years. It's just statistically going to happen. And you wanna get your fund solvent enough to handle that bad year. And we were fortunate enough to do just that. We tanked, we had a really bad year on claims, but we stayed solid. We worked with our reinsurer, we worked with to help pay the larger claims that we incurred, and have been able to keep our payments down.
It's worked out really well between the clinic, helping keep costs down, and of course we did save up a little extra during the COVID years, because it's true, nobody went to the doctor that year. So we did save a little.
I'm really comfortable with the auditor's recommendation to set all of these numbers aside in their own fund. I think it's now become an important enough enterprise that ought to be looked at as a separate fund. It can involve dollar amounts that are large enough to warrant their own fund. And since technically they can only be done during a budget action, Stacy will get cash. And we'll take that recommendation and set those up in a separate fund.
And we'll continue to budget for each department's expenses, so you'll see those, especially for the interlocals, so that we can bill the county for the interlocal expenses related to medical. But then you'll see a transfer over to the medical insurance fund for the contributions to get them out of the general fund.
Stacy, there was a time when I was a magistrate, we looked at the county budget, and when we looked at other operating departments, the medical insurance wasn't included. It was all lumped under general government, and it gave a confusing picture of operations. So we're gonna keep reflecting this in departmental budgets,
Yes.
so we've got a true cost.
Yes.
I like that. Quick question, if you may, Mayor. The money that we're, I guess, allocating, almost 3.6 million, was that money, I guess, technically in our general fund?
Yes, it's money that, so basically the way I came up with that number, city and employee contributions of 3.2. Megan exported information from our payroll system to tell me what employees' contributions are that are withheld from their paychecks, and then I just went to our budget. What do we budget for that medical expense? It's code 5140, what do we budget for that expense each year? And that's what will get transferred.
So if we were talking about how much money do we have in reserves, what 21 million was, right?
Right.
Now we're gonna need to back off a few million, $3 million off of that.
No, this is money we've already accumulated. During the audit, I'll probably have to make some special journal entries to get this year straightened out and get everything moved over to the fund now that it's set up.
Okay.
But no, it's not lowering our balance.
Do you know what your minimum reserves are gonna be?
For the medical insurance
Yeah.
fund, like I said, when we set it up, we talked about $500,000
Yeah.
being kind of what we
That's what you
wanted.
have there now, but
our
you don't know
minimum.
what the auditors are gonna recommend.
We haven't discussed that yet.
Okay.
No. They just, right now, wanted to see it tracked separately, because they
Sure.
did, like I said, they said it's not a true liability.
Right.
It's just cash you're saving,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
they wanted to see it separate.
Mayor, one of the items that you mentioned when you just started the discussion on this item,
Yes.
or this topic, was fuel.
Yes.
And obviously, hopefully we've seen the worst of it, but we don't know yet.
No, we don't know.
What, the projections that we made on fuel, pretty much where it is now, or were our projections based on fuel even going higher?
I believe we increased our projections on fuel. Let me look at the police department as an example, because they're obviously the highest fuel user. So we budgeted for fiscal year 23, 50,000 higher for police fuel than we did this year. So maybe we didn't get quite high enough, but we did budget more. We did anticipate those costs going up. So we'll obviously evaluate that mid-year and make sure we've covered it, but we did anticipate an increase.
Just like a family at home, we're feeling, regardless of the size of your budget, the size of your food. Okay, any other, let's see, which one first reading?
We are, none of them Tracy has read yet, so.
So answer your questions about its content. We ready for first reading? Okay.
An ordinance amending the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Summary, general fund. Prior year revenues are increased by $1,072,452. General government expenses are increased by $31,235. Utilities are increased by $72,500. Police expenses are increased by $68,016. Fire expenses are increased by $74,404. Public works expenses are increased by $2,500. Interlocal expenses are increased by $1,000. Capital expenses are increased by $80,000. Transfers to other funds are increased by $742,797. 911 fund. Intergovernmental revenue is increased by $2,800. Dispatch expenses are increased by $80,600. Grant fund. Federal grant reserve is increased by $6,000. Police expenses are increased by $6,000. ARPA fund. Fire expenses are increased by $36,500. Interlocal expenses are increased by $750,000. Capital expenses are decreased by $637,985. Environmental Services Fund. Surplus property sale revenue is increased by $763,300. Sanitation expenses are increased by $230,000. Cemetery Fund. Intergovernmental revenue is increased by $5,000. Transfers from other funds are increased by $5,000. Cemetery expenses are increased by $10,000. Medical self-insured fund, a new fund. Intergovernmental revenues are increased by $471,600. Other revenues are increased by $3,260,510. Medical related expenses are increased by $3,591,241. Capital projects fund. Transfers from other funds are increased by $737,797. Capital expenses are increased by $737,797. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance or hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect after its passage and publication according to law. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Publicly introduced and read for the first time June 13, 2022.
Thank you, ma'am. That was the first reading of the final budget amendment ordinance. Okay. And Stacy will stay at the podium. We have item C, a municipal order approving the renewal of liability, property, and workers' compensation insurance. Really pleased here to let you all know that with this bill, of course, you created the position of a risk manager, and it's already paying real dividends. With this renewal, I think we saved $10,000
Per policy,
per policy.
so 20 total.
And other discounts totaling this year $63,000. That doesn't cover all the costs, but it is a significant risk management's cost. Then we further reduce costs through controlling those insurance claims and increase employee quality of life by not having as many injuries. So it's very positive. Makes me positive.
Yes, so we appreciate the work Patrick's done in his short tenure already to capture some savings.
Patrick's been a really good fit, and congratulations on creating that position. He's mine. Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then we finish up with the municipal order approving the surplus of a lawnmower from the cemetery.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
And second. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. My comment there was, I'm pretty sure if Gene surpluses a mower from our cemetery, he's gotten his use.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Item 10, under fire department, is a resolution approving an application for Kentucky Office of Homeland Security grant. Chief, what we asked for was,
Trying to replace some hazmat suits that are due to be replaced.
motion.
Second.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Any questions?
Is that a matching grant from the?
That's 100%.
100% of that, thank you.
That's good.
I know, it's good.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that carries. And then a municipal order approving costs for repairs on engine 3, since the final price is fairly expensive, we thought we would make sure that we bring it to the council for your approval.
Did we run into something, or did something run into us?
Something ran into us on, well, this one, we've been hit a few times here recently, so.
Wow.
So this one got fixed. We picked up our reserve engine that was in another collision today, so it's back. And then, the parts came in for the ladder truck that's been out of service for pretty much an entire year. So we're hoping we'll get it back next week or two.
That's awesome. I was gonna say whatever ran into us.
It's been a juggling act, obviously,
And
but,
they have a lot of damage on their end
we're
versus
getting there.
damage on this. Motion
Yeah,
there.
we were pretty much an innocent bystander on this one, we got hit. And then, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Under Human Resources, second reading of amendment to the personnel ordinance, sponsored Ms. Hamler and Ms. Mitchell. We've got one on our program tonight.
An ordinance amending section 2-1 of the Code of Ordinances to add one position of Director of Affordable Housing and Homeless Prevention to the general government and one position of part-time dispatcher dispatch. Summary. 1, amend section 2-11 subsection C of the Code of Ordinances to add 1 position of Director of Affordable Housing and Homelessness Prevention to the general government and 1 position of part-time dispatcher to dispatch. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, so relative provisions and effective upon passage of publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read the first time May 23rd, 2022. Only read the second time June 13th, 2022.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, motion for approval.
Motion made.
Second.
Second, Paula, thank you.
May I ask a few questions?
Yes, sir.
I looked early at the last meeting, but I watched online to see the conversation that was generated there, and it wasn't really much. You'd said a couple of things, but what is this person going to do? What is our job description of this person?
We just finished the job description, actually. Last week we worked with Judge Covington and his HR folks, and Megan took the lead on it. So the goal would be that this person would seek out grant funding that works to improve infrastructure for affordable housing in our community, engage with affordable housing developers, advocate for affordable housing locally on the state level and with federal funding, as well as working with local nonprofits to mitigate the present homelessness in our community. So that it's kind of two pieces. The affordable housing is one thing, and then the homelessness is more of an acute issue. But the goal would be that they would be that government liaison working to leverage resources in the community to address those issues.
In this conversation, do we have a definition of what we're looking for as affordable housing?
What do you mean?
Well, what's the definition of affordable housing? Are we talking about more housing that's in the housing development, or are we talking about $100,000 house that you're gonna work with builders on, or?
Yeah, I think those are both options. I mean, one of them obviously is rental units. I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of good data out there, and I know about half the council attended the event KLC put on, and luckily the data on that was Scott County data, so it was talking about what an affordable unit was as compared to wages and average wages. So that's another thing that this person can do, is find ways to incentivize landlords, whether large landlords with, these hundreds of units, or case by case small landlords. How can we incentivize them to sprinkle affordable units throughout? Because I know there's a lot of tension associated with affordable housing, because they call it NIMBY in the industry, not in my backyard. Everybody associates affordable housing with blight and a number of things, and instead of building all affordable housing in one place, if you incentivize these bigger developers, if you have 500 units and you drop 5 to 10 affordable units throughout, you're not creating a cluster, and maybe those units don't have the highest amenities. So those are just some of the ideas, but yes, there are developers that specifically work in affordable housing, and they leverage tax credits to make it affordable, so they still.
Why wouldn't this come under the housing authority instead of us setting up a entity on our own? I know that this board's already approved it, two people were not supportive of it, but why would we not do this under the housing authority?
Having been a member, but you were a member of the Housing Authority Board as mayor. This really isn't what they do or exactly what their skill set is. I think that to be successful, I think we are leaving dollars on the table that could be available to our community if we had a program of work and someone aggressively pursuing those plans and those funds. I think we have a homelessness and affordable housing problem in our community, and this is an opportunity in concert with county government to start trying to address it. I have no illusions that will eliminate homelessness overnight or fix our affordable housing problem. We're growing too fast to ever really get past our affordable housing problem, I think, for a long time. But I think this is a positive positive step in the right direction. When Judge Covington started his task force on homelessness and affordable housing, that task force quickly identified the #1 issue, as it is in every community, that has a problem with homelessness, and that's a lack of affordable housing. This is the judge's and the city and the county's best effort to make some impact on this problem.
Lexington's doing the same thing. I'm in the middle of a situation right now. I'm gonna find out more about it. But, they are trying to address it as well, maybe in a different perspective, but it's not what, the Housing Authority does or Section 8. It's totally different to do. So, it'll be interesting. It's like having one person that is absolutely gonna go forward and, be aggressive, like, Devin said, that's gonna zero in on those and have all of those resources available. And it takes a person to do that. We can talk about it all day long. It needs to be done, but somebody's gotta be directed to do it. So hopefully, that's with the ARP money that we're gonna see that happen in the next couple of years, that it'll be sufficient to pay for itself.
What happens in 2 years when the ARPA money's not there?
I say in 2 years, we address it then.
I also think that it's designed to, so that the grants that we receive will take care of that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I'd like to say about it is that, we did the survey of what things to use the money for. And overwhelmingly, people said homelessness, people can't afford housing, over and over again. Those were the top topics that we were asked to address with ARPA funds. And, you know, just like with the city hall, when you have an expert that knows how to go after grants, you know, it ends up making a big dent in the salary that you have to pay. And I expect that if we hire somebody that knows how to do that and take advantage of every opportunity there is on the state and federal level.
If you don't do it, you don't know if it's gonna work or not, so it's worth trying.
So is it an answer to the city or to the county? Which way is it set up, through the city?
Yeah, we haven't drawn the interlocal agreement yet, but my assumption would be, Karen, and this is just one person's assumption, that it should report administratively to the city. The city took the lead in creating the position, number 2, most of the issues regarding affordable housing and homelessness are focused in urban areas and cities. This person will have work to do in Sandyville and Sampling Ground and in unincorporated areas. Most of their work is going to be done in the city of Georgia, in my opinion.
Mayor, if I could follow up and echo some of what was said. I too attended the KLC. It was eye-opening about how complex all of the entities are that can, you say leaving money on the table. We are leaving money on the table because this person is going to be able to talk to the banks, is going to be able to talk to the developers, is going to be able to talk to the grant writers, it's going to be able to talk to the lawyers, it's going to be able to talk to the housing. There are so many different departments. It was literally overwhelming to sit there and just listen to it all and then, well, what can we do about this? And it's going to take a devoted person to be able to pull all the strings together, because this one might work in this place and this one might work. There's not going to be one solution. And a person devoted to this is going to help that. And if you listen to the medical community, and this is just one community that is concerned about homelessness and home insecure people, if you don't have anywhere to place your medications, then you remain mentally ill. People tend to get fed, but it's housing, it's a place to put things where you're not being thieved upon, where you can stay sanitary so you don't catch diseases, where you can keep your medicines and they don't get lost in a creek or in a car. It's mind-boggling how much it could help our community in so many ways, whether it be theft and policing and mental illness and social services, if we could do better in this category. So I think it's a wonderful initiative.
Do we have statistics on how many homeless we actually have in Georgetown?
Did your committee identify that?
We didn't do that research, but they do the K count every year. Unfortunately, I find those numbers to be a little, they do it right in the winter, so anybody who's truly homeless, which there are a number of definitions, they found somewhere where they can be overnight, like in a 24-hour store, but I can contact and get those numbers. But the way on the committee, we talk about homelessness, but we also more framed it in terms of housing insecurity. So in the sense of, I don't know where I'll sleep tonight, or I don't know where I'll be in a week, is kind of that term. So we work with Scott County Schools on that as well, because they have great data based on housing insecurity for their students. But I can pull, and I think I got to you guys the kind of 3-pager with some statistics and data, and then the metrics that this office would track. And if you all think of additional metrics, I'd be happy to hear them and pass them along to that person ultimately, because one big part will be that this person will be reporting to the council and the fiscal court, hopefully quarterly. In the beginning, it'll be a lot of, this is what I'm doing to build the office, this is what I'm doing, this is my plan of work, and then from there, you'll have some metrics to track, and you'll be able to see the output from the office. But you know, you think of the issue, and you always think of people who maybe have lack of funding. But I was at our Chamber of Commerce board meeting, I think, end of last week, and it was like the third in a row meeting where the discussion was that we have big corporations paying solid wages, and their people don't live in Georgetown, Scott County because they can't. And these are people with legitimate jobs. So the business community is concerned as well, and that will be another point of engagement for this person, is through the Chamber of Commerce and local business, small and large.
Can I add something to what Willow and really everybody else, and Tammy and Devin have said? That was part of the conference that day as well. And one of the things that kind of struck home with me was that it is a community effort. It's the charities in the community, it's the gathering place, it's the Amen House, it's Elizabeth's Village, but it's also the hospital, and it's also the chamber members, it's also Toyota, for example, it's also the city, it's also the county. And right now, we've kind of got the perfect scenario. We've got the county willing to participate with us. We've got the ARPA funds that's willing to carry the load for the next 2 years. So really, it's essentially a fully funded pilot program for the next 2 years to see if it can get off the ground and what kind of impact we can have. And at least from my perspective, I don't have all the answers either, Karen. You and I talked a little bit about this. But I think it's going to evolve, and we're obviously going to make traction. And in 2 years, we can come back, we can evaluate it, and see how successful it's been. But I think we've got a very good chance of having an impact in this community. If we don't do it, then we're leaving it up to other people. We're leaving it up to the nonprofits. And the nonprofits, we know they need our help anyway. So why not partner? Let's partner and see if we can have a positive impact.
I think we're moving forward doing something that needs to be done, you know, at least we're doing something.
The thing that's really surprised me, given this time in the mayor's office, is how much the face of homelessness has changed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the way we perceive, we who are not homeless and home insecure, the way we tend to perceive homeless folks, it's not old men under a bridge anymore. There are some places where that's happening, but so much homelessness in our community today is couch surfing.
Right.
As I say with a friend this week, and Mom can afford a hotel tonight. We stay at my aunt's next week, but I'm not sure after that. And we don't know that. It's been suggested to me that we have over 300 students in Scott County school system that might be in. It's very sobering. 300 impact on children. I never thought about it in the place to set your stuff.
Mayor, I don't know if I can add much more than what's already been said, but I'm trying to listen. And I know that we have a retired educator here, we have a spouse of the principal, I'm the spouse of a teacher. And I don't have all the answers, but it's a real problem. And to hear some of the stories that I've heard from my spouse, it just breaks my heart. Whether the person's living in a car or in a tent, or moving from house to house every day, it's real. We're not creating a whole new housing authority. This is one person. And it's jointly funded by the county government, and it would be jointly funded by the half and half, city and county. And if we can make a difference, I think we have to. We have to try. And we can go back and reassess it, whether it's 12 months from now or 2 years from now, whether it's members of this council or future council, we can reassess this down the road. But if we can make a difference and get through to one person or one family, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try. So that's where I stand.
Roll call? Yes,
Any other
we have a
comments?
motion in a second.
Then we have that first, we've done the reading, we have first and second, we can call it.
All right. Mrs. Hambrick?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Lusby?
Yes.
Mrs. Leslie Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Saints?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mr. Shine?
Yes.
Mrs. Taggart?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 12 on our agenda under Police Department is first reading of the public nuisance ordinance. Sponsors Mr. Hampton and Mr. Stone. Pretty important ordinance. We're trying to address citizens' frustration with it's a way for us to deal with people having severe problems with homes that might be having illegal activity and concerning neighbors. This gives us the ability to define them as a public nuisance and take action to hopefully take action.
An ordinance adding a new article to Georgetown Code of Ordinances, Chapter 26, regarding public nuisance. Summary. 1, defines public nuisance for purpose of Chapter 26, Article 3, prohibits a property owner from allowing his, her, its property to be used as a site for a public nuisance. 2, provides for abatement procedures, including the requirement that the owner be given notice of public nuisance, implications of failure to abate the nuisance, process for citation issuance, and orders to close and vacate appellate rights, and the city's possession of a lien for fines, abatement costs, and reasonable administrative fees. 3, establishes fines and remedies for failure to comply with its destruction of posted notices, requires obedience of orders to close and vacate, and clarifies that in cases of multiple unit dwellings, an order to close and vacate is limited to the unit in which the public nuisance has occurred. 4, lists offenses to a violation of the article and provides the owner has the burden of asserting such defense. 5, provides for repeal of ordinances, severability of provisions, and effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced in public or for the first time, June 13, 2022.
Thanks, Tracy. I think the idea is there to give the police department a tool to work with landlords very quickly.
Like that.
To get attention where we haven't. Chief Boss, I think you use this tool in Lexington.
Yes, sir.
It's long overdue. So,
Yeah.
very effective tool.
Yeah, Mayor, if I can say something, it actually kind of goes affordable housing or that kind of thing, you think about it being a negativity, something negative. And actually, we do have some areas in town that is affordable housing, that you would classify as affordable housing, that they have had some drug issues there, and for years, we've never been able to do anything about it. So actually passing this ordinance, and if it's action is actually can be done, then that will help with the other part. It comes up as people are having negative feeling about affordable housing living next to them, because that's what you think, but you're bringing problems with it on that. So the two may help each other out.
Good. Good. Item D is a resolution approving an application for a Kentucky Office of Homeland Security grant. Chief, what are y'all submitting for? I'm sorry, you can spell that way.
It's for the armored vehicle.
Oh.
I actually submitted for it last year and we're not funded, but it's a real need. And I don't know if you want to talk about the condition of the current bank truck that y'all use.
We use an old Brinks truck that was 1960s model. So this would be a new armored vehicle. It's not a tank or anything like that. It's just to get us up closer.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, that carries. And finally, a resolution approving an application for bulletproof vest partnership. Motion?
Motion.
Thank you. There are no questions on that one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That gets us down to item 13 on the agenda, council comments. Mark, we start with you.
Just an update with our committee that Willow, Greg, Todd, and I have been meeting and reviewing ARPA requests from the philanthropies and nonprofits. We've met with 9 representatives so far. We have another meeting next week. And at the end of that meeting, we feel like we will have wrapped up all the requests. And at that time, we will deliberate for whatever time it takes and go back and ask more questions. And hopefully, we'll have something to report to you guys within the next weeks. So it's been eye-opening. And, you know, something that was mentioned earlier tonight was how we thought, you know, we were requesting the right amount. And now when we look back and we ask these people, you know, what is it that you're requesting there? They didn't plan for the fuel and supplies and materials and things like that. So many of the requests were, they under-asked. So, you know, we're just taking a look at that to see what we can do, and we learned a lot, and we'd like to share that soon.
Thank you, sir. Still getting a lot of questions on Republic and the services that they provide. I gotta give a big pat on the back to Andrew. He's stays on top of that with all the questions that get sent my way. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that. With the new budget coming out, we've got more paving coming out, so anybody that has any streets that need to be paved, get that to Eddie or Robert Bruin, and they'll get them on, look at them and try and get them on the list. From Parks and Rec, they have, not sure if anybody's had any complaints about it, but according to Kim, they've had volunteers from, I believe, if I understand it correctly, it was St. John's Catholic Church that was out at Brooking Park spreading mulch. So they were doing that on a volunteer basis. And the last thing, I've had a bunch of questions about, does Republic pick up brush? And I told them, said no, Public Works still picks up those. If you've got a large amount, or if a company you hire to take down a tree does not take that away, and they say the city will come get it, we subject to be charged for that. So if you have a doubt, a question about that, call out the Public Works office and check with them, and they'll give you a definitive answer on that. The grabber trucks are still going out on a daily basis, going around, following the old trash routes. So.
Where are those grabber trucks at?
Yes, matter of fact, the county's about to buy one too, just because
Thank you, Todd.
I know the other day I drove down a street and I called Robert, and he was very responsive, because there was a mattress laying on the curb, the road. And I just make the phone call, because it's like, something needs to be done. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, because I've had some people ask me, is about the permits that they're allowed to have for a year. How do they go about applying for that? Do we know that yet?
We're still working on those details.
You are? Do you have any idea when that might?
Yeah, it's right now, it's in the hands of the Bluegrass ad that is designing the app that'll make that work.
Okay.
They're close.
So they'll have to
Jared told us the
download
other
an
day.
app to fill out for the permit?
It's not really an app, it's a website. But
Okay.
they're having to modify it to fit our program.
Okay,
But
so
it
maybe the
won't
next
be much
council
longer.
meeting we have, we might have an update on that?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, I'll just reach out and let that person know. And the only other thing, I'm sorry.
You tell people about something like that, and they're anxious to go do it.
Yeah, they are.
That's what
That's
I
what I
think the goal
figured.
was July 1.
I'm
I
sorry.
think the goal was July 1.
July 1.
To roll out.
It's a goal, it's a goal.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and then the other thing I just wanted to reiterate about the lady or whoever's gonna be working for homelessness and stuff, is that I know that we've had ARP money, we've had Healthy at Home money for people to be able to apply for once you get home with your rent, and they would pay that month and 3 months ahead for people, but that money is no longer available. So I can't say that it's really a good time that we have some other avenue to go toward and forward to help with that, for sure. But that's all I have, Mayor.
Well, thanks.
That's not very big.
Could you just give everybody a clarification on the pools, on what's going on with the pool? I had people come to shop and they understand that the pool's closed out there, but the other pool, what's going on with the other pool? It's at,
The Lazy River.
because the pool, the play part is open, it's just the lazy river.
Yeah.
So if you could just kind of explain that a little bit.
You all recall that the major repairs that the city did a couple of years ago. And in fact, if you go out there now and walk around the lazy river, it's real obvious just looking into the bottom of the pool. It's visually obvious which portion of the lazy river we fixed and which we haven't. I mean, there's very distinct lines where we've excavated to get to the substandard or not thick enough plastic. I think that's what we've all determined, is that plastic that may not have been thick enough was used and led to some of these failures. The portion of the lazy river that has had this excavation and repair done is working and holding. Maybe it was just blind running faith that because that side held for a summer, we hope that that was all of the problems. But it's clear the other portion of the lazy river has similar problems. And it's gonna take a similar repair. It simply has to be drained. The concrete cut, so the repair lines can be as clean as they can be. And then it's just the messy work of excavating down to those plastic pipes, replacing them with the right gauge, and coming back and repairing the concrete. It's a big fix. If you take a moment to go take that walk, and it's worth your time, you get a real visual of exactly where the problem is, where the problem's been repaired, and where the problem's not been repaired. You can also, Kim will show you the area where the lap pool should be. There's a master plan that calls not only for the lazy river, but also a lap pool one day. But because of the ventilation system, I don't think we had any choice but to do the pavilion on an emergency basis. And the fact that the other half of the lazy river then failed is just a mean outcome. It's a really sad outcome. I thought the Parks Department did a really good job being very transparent with it, and just jumping out there and saying, here is the problem, it's closed, it's mechanical, and made promises to work with people who had bought season passes. I'm not sure what those arrangements have been, but they know they owe people refunds that aren't gonna get the full use of the pool. Just gotta fix the other half of Lazy River.
Well, that's just, people are upset because both of them are shut down at the same time and everything.
It's a hot summer.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And that pool is closed, and people get very emotional about it.
So thank you for explaining that. And two other things. Have the Staples, the old Staples entrance, the original Staples entrance, just like we've talked about all over town about putting in lights. They had complained about they can't see their street lights, and I talked to Eddie about that, but it's, or the street signs. But they have the reflective materials and all that, but they were asking if they could get a light at their entrance so that they can see better to turn in off of Champion Way. So I told them we were working on lights around town, so we would continue to address that. And then the other is, because I left early the other day and I went home and watched the meeting, you can't hear. So I know there's people at home that's trying to watch and they can't hear this meeting. So is there anything we can do to do a better job with, or add more
We have to
mics or
get some
something?
more microphones, if that's the case.
Yeah, you can't, it's
Is it-
really muffled and really can't hear clearly.
Those microphones have they're sort of a double-edged sword, right? The more you turn it up, the more you hear, but you also hear everything else too. Like if somebody picks up a piece of paper, so the solution has to be more mics. We can do that.
Yeah,
It really needs to be, I got a text last week as well that they couldn't hear.
We actually could probably, if we could keep this place from becoming cord madness, we could bring the mics from City Hall over and use that mic system. So, but it's a big if. It's a lot of cords.
Yeah, it's a pretty miserable viewing experience. When you've got your volume all the way up and your ear down by the speaker and trying to hear what somebody, and then the next person's got their volume up and you get blasted back into your chair.
And then, of course, anything that's up there, it can't be seen from the camera, it can't be seen, and, of course, I can't see it back here either, even though the TV's now bigger, but still, if you're home, you can't see it at all when you're home, so it's not ideal, but at least if we get that you hear better, fixed, it'll be a positive, so.
We're really gonna like it when we move back to City Hall.
Well, that,
Yeah.
but that's gonna be a while. So, all right, that's it.
Thank you.
That was the only comment I had, was I had a few texts this past week, the past couple of weeks on not able to hear the meeting, so that was my only comment tonight.
Well, as a retired teacher, we wear something around our neck. It's a laser system, and it comes with 3 separate devices that we could easily pass to people. We could sit one here, one there, and then everyone can hear everything. And it's not overly expensive, and it doesn't involve cords. There are no cords involved. It's very effective.
Well, if we're gonna be here, we've got an obligation to do that.
Yeah, so I would look into that, just as a suggestion. I've had this, we got a lot of phone calls about sanitation and Republic and garbage, but I've never had as many phone calls about anything as much as I have the pool situation. And it just brought up for so many people, I've had dozens of contacts by email or phone about the tragedy of not having any place to swim or skate or gather as young people in town or bowl and we're doing a lot of good things. We have a very tight budget, but if we find budget surplus based on some of the things we're working on, I assured people that we can come back and amend the budget, and if we find that we can perhaps start the Latin pool like Connie talked about a long time ago, we do have room for it. It would be a wonderful thing to, in my opinion, to make a focus going forward of doing something of a community center with something. I think that the article that Kim wrote in the paper was quite well done. She explained that it was an emergency situation with the lazy river as well as the pavilion. It would be helpful, just as a suggestion, if, I was caught a bit blindsided by all of this, and I found out about it on Facebook. And I said, I didn't know the lazy river. If they could just send an email and say, this happened, you're gonna get questions, please know this is why. That would be helpful to me as a council person, if that could be some kind of protocol, so that I would not be caught without an explanation. The other thing that I've gotten a lot of phone calls on, that I've mentioned before, is the omission of the police cameras. And I know that you're committed to that. We've had conversations recently at the ARPA meeting with Chief Bossy. He has also committed that, but I just wanted, I promised that I would bring this up again. If we can amend the budget and find that we have room to do it in the next budget session, then we can talk about it and continue to make it a priority as it was stated in the Community Coalition. And I don't think that people realize that it would be a 5-year lease. It wouldn't just be a one-time expenditure, and that it would also involve somebody to administer the police cameras, which would be an ongoing expense. We also need to make sure that it syncs with the county police cameras, because they go on the same kind of calls, and they need to have these things such that they sync together. And so Chief Bossy assured me and assured the ARPA committee that in the meantime, we are going to do everything we can to write policies by studying other places that have police cameras. We can get all of the steps in place over this next 6 to 8 months to a year, whatever it takes. We can do it right. We can appropriate the funds correctly. We can make sure that we're looking at what the county's doing, what the strengths have been, what the weaknesses have been. And Chief Bossy said, you know, we don't want to just take a template from somewhere else. We want to make sure that it works best for Georgetown. So it's not a no. It's a, in the meantime, we're going to try to do it right, and we're going to try to make sure that we have the funds not only to purchase and lease the cameras as an ongoing lease for at least 5 years, but also to hire the personnel to make sure it's administered correctly. So I just wanted to voice that publicly, because there's been a lot of communication to me about it. It's not a forgotten issue, and it's not a forgotten need. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I appreciate your making that point, Willow. The answer was never no.
Correct.
His statement was the mayor said something more quickly than he should have. It was never no. We wanted to do this so badly. I was led to say yes before I had a definitive picture of what it looked like.
Yes.
So, but we will always bow to reality. So, it is important, though, that we communicate to our constituents that we're continuing progress. I think that's a commitment that the county government and the sheriff's department began, and one that we will conclude.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to come? Yes, ma'am.
We didn't decide on the car club for this weekend. All of their dates are available for Main Street, but we could do the back walk.
For this Saturday. Because they wanted it this Saturday, didn't they?
They do want it this Saturday, that's right, yeah.
So we need,
So we can make a motion for them for this Saturday to use the back lot. And then going forward, make sure that we're coordinating with Lori for the rest of it.
There's nothing else going on, but she would want to check with the vendors on, the Main Street shops, so.
that would make those folks probably a lot happier this weekend.
I mean, I'll make it a motion that this weekend they can use the back parking lot of City Hall.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? It's
Tracy,
good catch.
Tracy, you gotta contact the new.
Yeah, I put a call them and I need their liability insurance and all that business. She had it, but she only had the original.